Continuing on with identifying our transformations of our geometric figures on the coordinate plane. So you have translation, which is a slide left or right, up or down. Rotations, which can be 90, 180, or 270, and that's both clockwise and counterclockwise. And we have our rules that we copied down. Again, going to call those out. Hopefully that's the third time you've heard it and you have finally written them down if you did not before. Reflection across the x-axis and y-axis, and then it can be other reflections as well, like we did on our previous worksheet, where it could be x equals 1, y equals -2, which you also did in your delta practice yesterday. Dilations we will get to tomorrow. So right now we're just making sure we're really honing in on these rules and figuring out what works best for us to get these answers right. So looking at number 11, this definitely did not just slide because C did not slide directly up or left. If we want to make sure and prove that to ourselves, it looks like C went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 up and to the right one. D did not go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 up and to the right one. So this is not a translation. So it's not a slide. So our choices are either rotations or reflections. And to reflect, that means F would have to line up directly with F above it or beside it. And in this case, F is right here. So it actually switched. It's not perfectly symmetrical to any line at this point. But it did look like it slid this way. So it might have slid that way. D all the way up there. C right here. So that's definitely going to be a rotation, and we just have to figure out which one. So rotation. So again, that is counterclockwise. And you know that again by making sure you're paying attention to what your original figure is, which is your letters without the apostrophe, so not the primes. So regular C versus C prime, regular D versus D prime. I cannot reiterate enough. You have to slow down and pay attention to that, or you will pick the wrong rules because you will read in the opposite direction as you have seen me do already numerous times in these videos. So counterclockwise, I'm going to guess about 90 because 180 means it should be about on its opposite side, and then 270 would be all the way around and down. If we know that this is about 90 degrees, this is 180, 270, 360. So use that knowledge that it looks like it should be a 90. So we'll pick a coordinate, D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -2. And if it's a 90 counterclockwise on our page, that told us that it was actually a 270 clockwise. So x, y becomes -y, x. So they switch, and the number in the front becomes opposite. So that 5, -2 should become 2, 5 is where our D prime. So since this is D, ideally this should be D prime if we are correct in knowing this is a 90 degrees counterclockwise. So D prime is 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Indeed. And we can check one more just to make sure. Better safe than sorry. So let's not use our zeros because those aren't as easily distinguishable as far as changing signs. We'll pick C. So 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So C is 3, -4. Remember, X value is left and right, and then go down as far as finding your coordinates. And our C prime, if we use our rule, means it should be +4, +3. They switch sides, and then your first number then becomes opposite of whatever it was. So 4, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And that is indeed C prime. So it is a 90-degree counterclockwise rotation. Looking at number 12. Again, that's not a slide because there's not a direct correlation in all those letters. If we figure out which one's our starting one, so the one without the apostrophes or the G prime, D prime, E prime, and F prime, this is our starting one. It definitely did not reflect. So there's not a mirror image across any line to the right or to the left. It didn't fold on top of itself. Which would also make it be a reflection. So we know, again, this is going to be a rotation. Remember, this way is clockwise. This way is counterclockwise. So ideally, it doesn't look like this traveled this way exactly correctly, because if it traveled all the way around like that, it's the furthest path to that shape. The shortest path means that F looks like it did go this way. G looks like it went that way. D turned, and E went this way. So we're definitely looking to try clockwise first. Again, if it was 180, it would be all the way over here, because each quadrant roundabout, depending on where you see your lines, are 90 degrees. So this would be a 90 turn, 180 turn. So he would have to come all the way around 270, then 360 would put it back in its place. So I'm going to guess a 90 clockwise turn, and we're going to check that. And a 90 clockwise is the same as 270 counterclockwise. But it means xy is going to become y negative x. So opposite of what we did the last time, they are going to flip, but the second number's sign changes. So we're going to pick a coordinate. Let's go with D, which is negative 1, 1. So D is negative 1, 1. And if we switch that, it's going to be positive 1, 1, because we switch their places, and that negative 1 becomes positive in that x spot. So D prime should be 1, 1. And in this case, whoops, and that should be a negative 1. D is negative 1, negative 1, which means it would be negative 1, positive 1, because this y would move to the front, and that would switch. So negative 1, positive 1. And probably if you're thinking more clearly and not making videos and talking to yourself, I would pick letters that don't have the same number coordinates or zeros in there for your test numbers. So E is 3, 3. So let's don't use that one. Let's go with G, which is negative 3, negative 2. So that one should be very telling. So negative 3, negative 2, and that's X and Y. They're going to flip. So 2 goes in the front, 3 goes in the back. That Y stays the same, so it's still going to be negative 2. But the X value does become positive because it was negative. So our G prime should be at a negative 2, positive 3. So negative 2, 1, 2, 3, positive 3. So it is there. So we do know that that is a 90 degrees clockwise rotation. 13, hope you're hanging in there. Again, like I said on the first video, I challenge you to pause your video at any point throughout and try them, because if you mess up, it's no big deal. Just make sure you come back and get the right answers. So our original shape is GFH. Again, the letters that do not have the apostrophes, those primes, so G prime, F prime, and H prime are the change. Anytime I see them overlap, I know it's not a translation. It didn't slide anywhere, and it's not a rotation, more than likely, unless it completely turned. So like your points turn in opposite directions. Those might feel like rotations, but definitely if they fold on top of each other like this one did, where our G is 1 to 1, our H is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It looks like it reflects over the y-axis. So reflect over the y. And we do have a rule for reflection over the y-axis, and that's where your x, y then becomes negative x, y. So you could test some points and make sure if you wanted to. So if I use my H, it's 1, 2, 3, 1. So 3, 1. And my H prime should be negative 3, positive 1. So negative 3, positive 1. That's right. So if we did our G, it's 1, 3. Nope, that is G prime. So negative 1, 3. So G prime should be 1, 3. The X changes because it's going to switch from quadrant 1 to quadrant 2, or from the right side of your x-axis to the left side, and we know this side is positive and this side is negative. So then in that case, G works as well. So reflection over the y is the correct answer for that one. And then as we move on to the number 14, again, pause the video, try it. What's the worst that can happen? You may think this looks like a rotation around its point, except that if I rotated it all the way around, I would come over on top of H, and we definitely would need I to come over to I. As far as a reflection, again, this H would need to match up with H prime here, and they don't. And this would need to be just J and J prime, and in this case, we have H prime and J. So that means definitely not a reflection either. So rotation and reflection are off the table. So it's going to be translation from I went to the left. Whoops. Start at your original. Go towards prime. So up 1, right 4. Start at original. Up 1 to the right 4. Start at original J. Up 1 to the right 4 to our J prime. So xy is going to come xy. We said up 1, right 4. X is what controls your left and right, so that's plus 4 because it went to the right. And then y controls your up and down, so that's going to be a plus 1 because it went up 1. So the whole shape, maybe it's a little easier to see if you see this. The whole shape went up 1 and then slid to the right. 2 more, we're almost there. Hopefully you're seeing some patterns on all these. So number 15. U to U, V to V, W to W. But as far as translation, W went up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and V only went up 2. So translation's off the table. As far as a rotation, if you went counterclockwise, this way, that means that W would have turned on to where the U is and they wouldn't match up. So it's not going to be a rotation. It does look like a reflection. And it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of that W. And in the center is your X axis. So it's 3 on either side. So 3 up, 3 down, 1, 1, and then 2, 2. So they are mirror images, like complete flips over the x-axis. So this is going to be a reflection, which can be used interchangeably with flip, just depending on the teacher, the worksheet, or the program you're working on. Reflection over the x-axis. That also has a rule, which means xy is going to become x negative y. And that's again because you are crossing over from the positive y's to the negative y's usually. Not always going to be the case necessarily. If it's all in the lower half, your y's might not change exactly the same. Well, I'm sorry, for it to cross over the x-axis, this always works. If it reflects over like a y equals -2, then that rule will not work. So it only works as it crosses or reflects over the x-axis. Last but not least, number 16, you can see hopefully at this point that this is a translation, that it did slide. Again, make sure you don't make my same mistakes. Identify your starting shape, and it's going to move towards the prime. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, down 2. So down 2 to the right 6. Check your V. Down 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, to the right 6, down 2 looks good, and X is down 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So as we write that rule, you can write it in words as down 2, right 6, but as our X, Y notation, arrow notation, we have X, Y, again, that much is non-negotiable. The part you fill in is the part you put with the X and you put with the Y. X controls your left, right. It is a positive 6 because it's to the right, so plus 6. And your Y is your up, down. It went down 2, so we're going to do -2. Hopefully you were able to get all those down in your notes and didn't take too long. Again, reach out if you have questions. Geometry is one of those things I don't find very difficult because I'm a visual learner. But if you are not a visual learner, I need you to ask me questions so I can reword it and help you find a way to be able to see it. All right, guys. Have a great day.